We should get a cat in here. Is it not? Oh, yeah. Thank you, Hype. All right, we've begun to talk about some issues that hopefully this lecture will provide a little bit of background for, and that is all day today we've been talking about how at moments mother tongue, this idea seems impossibly coherent. Impossibly clear, impossibly focused. And then I loved listening to the discussion because that coherence disappeared almost immediately before our eyes. And only one of the reasons. Education is not the only infrastructure that I would say produces this illusion of coherence, if that's fair, but it's one of the main ones. And so that's what I'll be talking about, is how the whole notion of mother tongue is in some ways very partially and unequally mediated through schooling and the way that schooling has emerged in the colonial context through to the present. So that with what we find in the NEP is, and what we found in many, many iterations of policy in Indian education is, various reflections, various responses to a state of affairs that the Indian government found itself saddled with, one might say, at independence, and how the Indian government has tried to manage the, one might say, post-colonial impossibilities of maintaining the idea of a polity based on language in some way, and on the other hand, of serving citizens. And so many people, of course, have been left out. All right, what is language medium? I must say, in my own fieldwork, I lived in Varanasi from at various periods of time from 1993, sounds impossible, to 1997. And 96, 97, I spent a year in the city. And one of the things that I was really taken with is this term medium, sometimes produced medium and sometimes produced madhyam, depending on whether one was speaking in English or Hindi, but not necessarily. Many people recognized medium as a Hindi word. No one recognized madhyam as an English word. There you have that post-colonial problem. All right, medium refers to the language of instruction, and in fact, medium of instruction is the good formal technical term that people in education tend to use. The language of instruction, so medium of instruction in which most interaction purportedly occurs in an institution, is, let's say, purportedly means is said to occur, how about supposedly occurs in an institution. Medium is primarily used in educational contexts, where it can also refer to other things, right? So it can refer to texts, to examinations. You can talk about examinations as in one medium or another, and coaching services. Coaching services themselves are divided by medium. I've left out some things here. You can also talk about people in terms of medium, right? So Hindi medium child, English medium child. You can talk about teachers. You can talk about administrators. You can even talk about parents in terms of medium. And then you'll have parents talked about usually, oh, this was painful and fascinating. If you had a household where you had Hindi medium children and English medium children, the parents were English medium parents, never Hindi medium parents. So you see that relationship there. And primarily used, again, is quite loose, right? Primarily used often means, depending on what kind of school you're looking at, primarily used can mean that the language is put on stage, as it were, and used for as little as a few minutes per day, right? Or other sorts of schools where full competency and fluency is flourishing. All right. Medium is really, sorry, how do I, nah, it doesn't matter.
You could just read the first
Oh, there we go. Medium is, I couldn't, but medium is a pan-South Asian phenomenon, South Asian phenomenon. So really medium even is there in places, we can't blame medium completely on the British. Medium is there in places that were never colonized. It is a word known and commonly used in the countries of Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka.
Not necessarily used in other British colonies, right?
Not necessarily, but it is used in many of them. But no, not necessarily, no. And it's used in Nepal, of course. It's never colonized. And in fact, medium distinctions in Nepal are especially salient, let's say. Across these countries, the languages that schools are identified with depend, of course, on which languages have gained recognition in educational policy. So one only really talks about medium, meaning medium in quotes, when a language has gained some sort of legitimacy, some sort. And across all of these countries, English is a possibility of a school's identification. So across all the nations of South Asia, English medium schooling is there. In other words, English medium schools exist in all of the nations of South Asia. This makes for a different set of possibilities for medium designation across the nations in South Asia. We see actual variability, in other words, in how medium and medium discourse arises. Medium discourse simply means the way that people talk about medium distinctions, language medium distinctions. For example, in Bangladesh, Bangla medium and English medium schooling are the primary options. And if you look at the Bangladesh national website about education, it actually makes a claim about the citizens of Bangladesh that their English is quite good, right? That's its blanket statement about the people of Bangladesh, is that they tend to be extremely proficient in English. And one wonders about Bangla medium schools. Are the primary options, whereas in Sri Lanka, Professor Davis is going to talk about her own research. There are Sinhala and she already has in some capacity, Sinhala, Tamil, and English medium schools. So, and India, of course, how many medium schools are there? We're going to find out. A lot larger number. All right, and the number of languages that might be found in schools varies too. In Bangladesh, for example, one finds Bangla and English offered, and really those are the languages. But in Sri Lanka and India, there is a trilingual policy. As we know, someone mentioned 1968, the Kotari Commission was the instantiation, the official adoption of the trilingual language formula or three language formula, or what people in education call the TLF. Although it took many years for it to be formulated. Whereas Sri Lanka's policy is meant to foster ethnic harmony in the wake of the Civil War. I know this because I read about it, compliments of Professor Davis. India's three language formula dates to a recommendation of the Kotari Commission from 1964 to 1966. And as we know, the commission urged the adoption of a policy by which every Indian student would study three languages. According to the three language formula, every Indian student should study, and this is of course what the NEP is referencing, this original formulation. On the one hand, or well, I guess we don't have three hands, the mother tongue or the regional language. So one should study that, usually at the earliest levels of schooling. Later on, the official language of the union or the associate official language, so long as it exists. And we'll talk about this associate official language designation. And third, a modern Indian or foreign language not covered under 1 and 2, and other than that used as a medium of instruction. This is from Kailash Agarwal's piece, English in India's Three Language Formula, published in World Englishes. And this is just a rhetorical question for you. How is mother tongue used here? In fact, is there ambiguity? What is the official language in the associate official language? By the way, what is the official language in the associate official language? Hindi and English. Yes, Hindi and English. Official language is Hindi, associate official language is English. And why so long as it exists? Yes, it was authorized on a temporary basis for 15 years? I promise, 15 years. It was made permanent. Yes, permanent forever. So no longer as long as it exists. It will exist forever, apparently, right? All right. Indeed, Hindi was 15 years was a period given at the instantiation of the Constitution when Schedule 8 was written. Yes. So 15 years was given as a period that English would be allowed for use in government, the courts, schools, road signs, etc. And then when the time came for Hindi to become the official language of India, the lone official language, it became impossible for all sorts of reasons. One reason is many people said because of primarily Tamil, but also other language movements in the South that were profoundly antagonistic to the idea of Hindi becoming the official language. And also, of course, to the fact that you had a situation after 15 years that if you got rid of English, the economic transactions and economic political force of English, wouldn't be accessible to politicians, businessmen, etc. And so the 15-year deadline was simply suspended by the Parliament. And so Parliament said, English will be the associate official language forever, in perpetuity, I believe was the language. All right, so the Constitution made English associate official language. Resistance outside the Hindi-speaking area, primarily in West Bengal and the southern states. West Bengal was also a place that did not want Hindi imposed, prevented the measure. And in fact, Das Gupta is a sociolinguist of India, an Indian sociolinguistic linguist of India, who worked in the 1970s, who wrote a fascinating paper about the parliamentary discussions that ensued in the debates about the cancellation of English and the deadline and how much resistance there was to that. Thus, the Official Languages Act of 1963 decreed that English would be retained as associate official language and that the central government could communicate in English as well as in Hindi. So either one. The Constitution of India also offered official recognition to 14 languages listed in the 8th schedule. And if you look, I can't remember what page it's on, but it's several hundred pages into the Constitution. You'll find the 8th schedule. And over time, the amendments to the 8th schedule that have added the languages. Currently, there are 22 such languages. So there are 22 languages authorized by the central government for use in education across the country. This means you were all talking about funding, about the infrastructure necessary for the creation of texts, teacher training, assignments, media, and this 8th schedule includes the ability to receive funds for those languages, as well as how do you find people to create glossaries, vocabularies, do that translation work. All of that is here too. So these are the languages in the 8th schedule. There's Assamese, Bengali, Bodo, Dogri, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Kashmiri, Konkani, Maithili, Malayalam, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Urdu, Punjabi, Santali, Sanskrit, Sindhi, Tamil, Telugu, and Urdu. These are the languages that are guaranteed for use in school and authorized by the central government. And again, the list has grown over time, but not 14 languages to 22 languages in 5 decades. Is that a huge growth in the number of languages? So acceptance to the 8th schedule is, you might say, heavily policed. There is a great of not resistance, but I would say a great deal of difficulty involved. As Nishant was talking about, for Santali to get on this list took an enormous effort, including the creation of a federal state and enormous sort of political activism. It's not easy to get on this list. In other words, this list is quite a goal, in part because of that kind of authorization it brings. For example, one thing that I will talk about is this language Hindi on the list. How many varieties can you list that would come under Hindi? Are any of them on the list? Maybe one? Not just one? Mathily? Maybe. And honestly, it's still being debated and will be debated forever. Is Mathili Hindi or is it not? How many books have been written on this? My own teacher from University of Chicago was obsessed with this question, and he wrote 3 books on that question. And people are still fighting about it. But Mathili did get on the list. It did get on the list. So is it Hindi or is it not Hindi? If you ask most Mathili speakers, do you speak a variety of Hindi, they will say, what else would it be? All right, so here's the map. This is just meant to give you a sense of how big Hindi is geographically, and if you, especially that middle state and the state to its right, if you put those 2 states together, it would be the 6th largest country in the world, I believe. I'm talking about Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, of course. You get a sense of the importance of Hindi, but also if you think about all of those varieties in that region, you understand a little bit about the political fiction that is Hindi, and a little bit about the ways that an incredible degree of variety has been concentrated into this one word. And also, of course, what other Schedule 8 language do we always forget about related to Hindi? What is Urdu doing on this list? Isn't it Hindi? Is there any difference? I mean, speaking from the perspective of phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax. All right, question for you. Do all languages in the 8th schedule correspond to state boundaries? So if you wanted to say, oh, those 8th schedule languages, those are simply states. Are they? And are there plenty of states without their own language? Like half of them, right? So you've got Hindi. This map is good for this. Which of these does not have a state boundary? Konkani, definitely, of the ones mentioned here. Konkani, and if we go back to this list, how many of these do not have a state boundary? Poro, Sindhi, Sanskrit, definitely. Dogri, Mathili, and do all the others? Santali, and of course, last but not least, Urdu, right? So the Indian government, by virtue of the 8th schedule, guarantees the use of these 22 languages in state communication, the courts, and educational contexts. English is also included at the national level by virtue of its recognition as an associate official language. But of course, is English associated with any state? Is it the official language of any state? I thought so. I believe it's Nagaland that has English as its official language, but it's the only one. No, no, and it's not on the schedule. In most parts of India, English is one language medium possibility. Other possibilities depend largely on where one finds oneself and which language or languages are included in the 8th schedule. The language or languages recognized by the state in which the school is located does not exhaust the possibilities of which languages can be found in schools. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about what languages can be found in schools. We're talking about the authorization that the government provides for a language. For example, in Varanasi, Bengali Tola. Anyone heard of the school? No one. Bengali Tola is a school. It's one of the oldest schools in India that offers Bangla, English, and Hindi. Although the school is Hindi medium, it is known as a Hindi medium school. It has offered Bangla since it was founded in the 1850s, right? But no one would call it Bangla medium. All right, simple discussion question. Is medium an ideological phenomenon, given what I've told you thus far? In order to consider this, think about how many language mediums were available in schools in your hometown, right? So where you grew up, what language mediums were there? Think about how many language varieties existed there, right? So what were all of the language varieties in your hometown and which ones were mediums? And think about what language mediums exist across the nation. So what language mediums are there that really are pan-Indian? In other words, wherever you go in India, where will you find one language medium in common, right? So think about that and discuss it just for a moment. Yes. Did you raise your? Oh. And we can just offer a few answers. This doesn't have to be comprehensive. Does anyone want to offer? Haifa? Do you know which one?
Yeah, both of them work. It's just
Oh, great. Anyone want to offer just an example or two?
so.
So how many languages available as mediums in your
As
home?
mediums, mostly Tamil medium and English medium only in
Tamil and
Nadu.
English medium.
And language varieties, I would say, I mean, in terms of state board schools, I'm not sure about CBSE and ICIC. We had Tamil, Sanskrit, Hindi. Hindi actually not that prominent, maybe like 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, but not in the higher education. And then we had French. But usually CBSE schools also have German. And they mostly have the option of choosing between Tamil or Hindi while growing up. So most of them end up choosing Hindi.
Excellent.
ICIC has a lot more options than.
And the last question?
Definitely English medium.
English, only English.
Yeah.
All right, so we have someone from Tamil Nadu, and the answers are 2 language mediums, Tamil and English. Lots of language varieties. You listed maybe 8 in total, 6 to 8, and yet 1 medium across the nation. And just one more person, I have more slides to get through. Someone not from Tamil Nadu. Only for comparative reasons. Nothing to do with Tamil Nadu.
This would be another southern state.
It's okay.
So in Karnataka, where I come from, there is Kannada and English medium schools, obviously, but there are also Marathi, Urdu. I'm not sure, but there might be a Hindi medium school as well. Hindi,
Hindi.
possibly. I'm not very
As a
sure.
medium.
As a medium, yeah.
All right.
And the second question, so is it about instruction or just spoken language?
Either one, both.
In that sense, there are a lot more languages. So there is Telugu, because again, it's closer to the border. There is Lambani, I can think of on top of my head. In addition to all the languages that were spoken, and also Dakkini, the Hyderabadi Hindi, that's widely popular.
Great. And last question?
I think it would be English.
English. Okay. And so if we keep asking everyone in the class, I bet, correct me if I'm wrong, it's possible, that the first answer is going to be either 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. 4 is pushing it. Usually it's going to be 2. The second answer is going to be a bunch, quite seriously, many. And the place I lived, the answer would be quite a few, including answers that one would not expect, right? Depending on who you asked. Answers like broken or bad, or I speak bad. I'm not kidding. I speak broken language. I speak you don't want to hear. That was often an answer, right? I'm too embarrassed to even say. When we just talk, it's fine. But when you ask me what language I speak, I fall silent. I actually heard this answer. And then the third one, so 2, many, 1, right? And right there, do we find something about the relationship between English, its counterpart, which is the Indian language, and then languages that are not recognized by the Indian state, right? We find that tier that Nishant told us about from, for example, Mohanty's work, where Mohanty talks about that layered language ranking. All right, are mother tongue and language medium the same or different for a person? Different? Do you mind sharing? Are you talking about yourself or in general? And do you mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. So at so my place is like Mithila, so it's Mathili there, but there is not a single Mathili medium school. They are still struggling for it. There is no Mathili primary.
Even
medium
though
school.
it's on its schedule.
Exactly, even though it's there. So that is there.
Wonderful. And medium?
Medium was Hindi mostly,
Hindi.
Hindi or Urdu medium.
Great. Anyone else? Yes.
So in our area, I am sure it would be there across India, but we would be able to distinguish, like that class distinction would come into place because we would have Madhyamik board schools, as in Bengali medium, Madhyamik, Ucha Madhyamik or Madhyamik board, which is West Bengal state schools,
Yes.
but English medium instruction. And the teachers there would have different competence levels than private English medium school teachers. So they would be taught in English, but the way they would speak or communicate in a space, in an urban space where we have private or convent educated students, that distinction would come into play, which was very visible in our area. That was same thing with CBSE board. Like you could make out that this person is from an English medium CBSE board, an English medium ICSE board, or Bengali medium Madhyamik board. This, I think this complicated it further, and the linguistic differences would be very visible, like on the cultural level.
Definitely. Yes, whether a school is privately run or it's related to a state board or a municipal corporation or something like this, this even complicates this picture more. But also, would you agree, also produces a duality by which you compare one kind of institution to another kind, and that one kind of institution and another kind can actually be made up of different things depending on board structure, depending on where you are, depending on what languages are available. Yes, thank you for that. Did you? Yes.
For me, during my schooling, where I was studying,
Yes,
my mother tongue and the medium of instruction was same.
yes.
Yeah,
And
but
what was it?
what? Odia.
Odia.
Yeah, and but near from my village to the nearby village, whatever was there, the it was a tribal dominated area. So more than 55 spoken languages were there, and whose mother tongue was different and medium of instructions was different. So that's why I said maybe the mother tongue and medium of instruction sometimes it may same or it may differ.
Absolutely.
It's depend upon the geographical areas and all.
Do you happen to remember or know, and maybe the answer is no, what was the medium of instruction for those 55 languaged children?
Obviously, the state dominant language only,
So it was
Odia.
Odia medium.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Understood.
as for the policy, it is like that. There are MLE teachers, multilingual education teachers were there. But, just now I came from the field. I visited 169 schools. Out of 169 schools, I found only 2 MLE teachers.
I see. Out of 169 schools,
Yeah.
2 MLA teachers.
Yes, only 2. And they were also not affluent with their languages.
Understood.
And I want to share one experience. I'm talking about the MLE teachers, okay? One of the teachers who was recently transferred to a school who is not belonging to her area. Okay, so her mother tongue was Kui. Okay, and she was from a place named Narayanpatna, and she has posted to a block named Dasmanpur. Both of the block, the main tribal group were Kui language, but they speak different way. For example, she was talking, means when I was interviewing her, she was telling so many vocabularies are there, which is contrasting each other. Like especially Narayanpatna Kui people, they speak anda, means rice. Okay.
Oh,
When the same things,
Okay.
when they go to when she posted to Dasmanpur, at that time they speak it Mandru. So when she was saying onda, then people were not getting any sense that what she is telling. So the language is Kui, but vocabulary is different.
yes,
So in that way, so many issues I encounter.
absolutely.
Right. So in the context of these questions, I just want to refer to my case. So I am from Jammu and my mother tongue is Chopri, and it's not taught in school at all, right? So the medium of the instruction is basically mainly Hindi or English, right? And Dogri is generally taught when you enter higher education or something. And I would also refer to one other case like this term, language medium has a lot of ambiguity in it, right? For example, in my school, the textbooks would be in English, right? But almost all the interactions that will happen will be in Hindi, right? We will basically be made to read the material and then explain it to in Hindi, and the interaction would follow through it, right? So even so, the schoolish may be a English medium or Hindi medium, language will often shift. For example, I will give another example. So in Bangalore, right, they have their own variety of Indian Sign Language, right? That have like taken a bit from American Sign Language and ISL and everything, right? So there are schools here of Indian Sign Language, not exactly schools. I mean NGOs that teach Indian Sign Language. So deaf people who know BSL are made to learn ISL, right? But when they leave that classroom space, even if they are in the school only, they will shift to interact in the other language. Even teachers, right? So when we are talking about like language medium, right, we need to consider that how things exactly like are functioning in those spaces, right? Because there will be a lot of ambiguity.
Absolutely. Sorry. Do you want to? Any others? All right, second question. Are certain mother tongues more likely to be offered as language mediums? And why?
I'm not sure if it's more likely to be offered. It depends more upon the space in which the school is situated. So when I was in Dehradun, which is like the educational hub, there are people who, send their kids from all over the country to study there, right? So we had people from Punjab, from Rajasthan, Haryana, and so on. But usually most of the schools, they're both ICSE schools, CBSE schools, and government schools. The medium of instruction would be English and Hindi. But there was a point in my life where I was, part of a school where
it was run by a Punjabi association. So there, in that school, you had the option that the main language of instruction was English. The second language was Hindi or Punjabi and Sanskrit.
Yes.
So if you are a Punjabi, you have to take Punjabi as your third language. Other people may take the option of Hindi or Punjabi. So that ethnicity or that mother tongue, it comes in through the people who are running the institution. So that
Absolutely.
likelihood comes in with who runs the institution and who offers this.
Definitely. Just, yes, in Varanasi, Bengali told us, from an old Bengali family that came from, Bengal and set up the school. And was that the case? A Punjabi family had, yes, in Dehradun.
So this was a group of people, right? So so in
An association.
Dehradun, there is this idea of the Mahants,
Yes.
who are the religious leaders who have settled in Dehradun, right? So it's through them they have they have a plethora of institutions. They run schools, they have hospitals, they have colleges. So these are affiliated to Punjab. It's not run by Punjab government, but it's the religious factions that running it. So it would be either the Khalsa faction or the other, whatever other varieties that
Absolutely.
there are. So-
But it was known as English medium.
Yes, it was known as an English medium, but then if you happen to belong to a Punjabi family or a Sardar family, you do not have the option to choose between Hindi and Punjabi. You have to study Punjabi.
Punjabi.
Also, because we're talking about people coming from different states and establishing these sort of schools, if you talk about the migrant experience, for example, there is a large population living in Bahrain of people who are largely from South Indian states. So they do not prefer for their children to learn the Gulf languages at all. So their medium of instruction there is like the number of children that need to be educated there is so large that they have couple of very big CBSE schools there. So the medium of instruction is English, but the kids, they come from Malayali families or Tamil, Telugu families, or might be from Dehradun, Uttarakhand. So they have their own regional languages or their tribal languages, whatever you wish to, varieties of languages are there, but those mother tongues of theirs are not the medium of instruction for them. It cannot be. It's English that is the medium of language, but when they interact with each other, they pick up certain vocabulary from each other's language. So they will know Hindi words, they will also know Malayali words, they'll be able to pick up each other's conversation, even if they are being held in like different languages.
Absolutely. Anyone else? All right. And finally, are all language mediums considered mother tongues? No? And why not?
Okay. I'm talking about my personal experience. I visited some schools where teachers were teaching in different languages. Okay, those who are not officials, even those languages are not in a standard form also, because teachers were using broken language. They are not affiliated with that languages. So how can we say those are, what to say, medium of mother tongues?
Absolutely.
Yeah, even nobody has recognized even some languages. It's not in any list.
I see. So some languages are not really considered valid mother tongues even. Is it?
No, it's not like
sure.
that. Yeah.
Okay. It does get confusing. But English is certainly an answer. Does anyone claim English as mother tongue? Could you talk about that?
When we were talking about the NEP, we were discussing it. I think we all explicitly saw that English was othered as the primary other language, and all the other mother tongues in the separate category. So I think even like we spoke of Meghalaya, which has English as its official language, yet it was not was constantly othered in policy. So yes, we can say, and English is the most, I think, most numerous schools. We have more than, like, Hindi and English would compete with each other in terms of the number of schools we have as per medium all over India. So I think that's makes sense, right? Yes. Yes, that's yeah, we have a native population of Anglo Indians as well who have been residing in India for a long time. They are Indians by and large they are. And so what do we talk about them, like, well, yeah, and even like migrants.
Anglo-Indians might say that English is their mother tongue.
Yes.
So in that case, we could say, in at least Indian context, all languages mediums are considered mother tongues, because it's a far-fetching, of course, thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my question is like,
No, it needs to be on the 8th schedule to, part of the point is that you really have these different domains that don't fit together very well. And yet, you have the 8th schedule, you have the idea of medium, you have the idea of mother tongue, you have the idea of languages offered in school as a class of instruction. And what brings them all together so that they become somewhat coherent? Medium, right? Medium. In other words, medium really does oppose one to another and actually focuses these things very easily, so that, is it easier to talk about someone's mother tongue, their linguistic experience, their community, their background, or is it easier to say what medium someone belongs to? Which one is much, much more straightforward? Medium. And is this even displayed publicly? When you see the buses go by clogging the streets, the kids in their uniforms, do you know immediately what medium they go to? Of course. And which neighborhoods they're headed to and from, right? All of this is inscribed on the landscape and focused in opposition.
No, I also think that it's particularly prevalent in state board schools, at least in Tamil Nadu, for it to be an English medium school, but then the medium of instruction would often be Tamil, because the kind of, it's assumed by actually the teachers are also more comfortable teaching in Tamil, and it actually varies between the teachers. Their competency in the language differs. And also some teachers do assume, they repeat the point. So they'll first teach it in English and then repeat it in Tamil for the students that they assume would not understand English, or they're not from the background, the class background, to understand English. So this kind of diversity exists.
And I know it's confusing. So is this a state board school with English medium, or English as a language of class, a classroom?
No, this is a English medium state board school.
Yes, understood.
Also, the class difference could be apparent again by looking at like privately owned schools and government owned schools. So coming from a government owned school, you're told to, like, the medium of instruction is English in name only. We all communicated in our regional languages. But when we interacted with students who were going to good private schools, they were encouraged to speak in Hindi also with their Hindi teachers. So, and pure unadulterated Hindi without code mixing and code switching was appreciated by their teachers. So the medium of instruction was English. You were supposed to interact in English, but if it's a Hindi period, if it's a Sanskrit period, like it happens in America, if it's a Spanish period, you try to speak in Spanish only. So that was encouraged there. But then my mom has been a school teacher for the last 25 years, and she's a Hindi teacher. And she's always appreciated for talking to her students in English outside of the classroom when she's not teaching Hindi.
Yes. Yes. And I appreciated what you said and the way you said it. There's the state board school, and then there are good English schools. And you didn't say it, but there's another kind of English school, and that we will talk about in later lectures. In other words, the extreme growth since the 1990s of private English medium schools across the country. Yes.
They have a huge fee, but they don't have the. So when I was like going back to the question of what language of instruction were you offered, I grew up in a town where Hindi medium schools were only available. So my mom moved us to the city for an English medium education because that was considered good. But now, looking back after a few years, there are those schools available, but the quality of education in those schools is not that good. So there are tiers of English medium schools as well.
Yes, definitely. And they've grown in number, one can say, over the years. Yes.
I think a very interesting point was how Anglo-Indians are there.
Yes.
But even more interesting thing was in Delhi, I used to tutor a girl whose family was North Indian. They were filthy rich, filthy rich. I was hired to teach this girl Hindi, brilliant kid. She was 10 years old, brilliant kid. She did not know her genders in Hindi. And I was hired just to get her through the exam part of it. I went the route of, okay, because she was brilliant at storytelling, says like, just get your Legos. And sometimes we did just story telling exercises. Both her parents were from UP. They were from Uttar Pradesh, but they were so rich, even her grandmother and like her grandparents spoke in English. So she didn't need to, and she was studying French and one more foreign language in school. But in school, she only ever spoke Hindi in the Hindi class.
Yes.
Because it was a Delhi-based school, so they had to have Hindi as a subject till 8th standard, and then she dropped after 8th standard. But the thing is, it's because I think none of us here represent that class. It didn't come to her mind. I don't know what her mother tongue is, if not English. Because even to teach her Hindi, I had to go through the route of English. And she was a brilliant kid. She had no fault of her own. She just was rich. So she's not Anglo-Indian. So I don't know what her mother tongue is, if not English. And that creates an exclusive social group, which counteracts the idea that English is no one's mother language in this country. Maybe they are, but they don't care about us enough to even talk to us.
One wonders. I wonder. And if I may say, correct me if I'm wrong, I have a very limited awareness, but most of the Anglo-Indians I knew in Eastern UP were not wealthy at all. They were part of a pretty meager underclass, if that makes sense. Just kind of surviving. But yes, I understand. In other words, Anglo-Indian and its relationship to English is there, but that doesn't necessarily imply social class. So I'm just, yes, you're talking about someone who is of an extremely privileged social class. And then there's the association of English with ethnicity, quasi-ethnicity, caste, that is probably associated actually with the opposite end of the social class spectrum. Fascinating. Thank you.
I should correct myself. There was an English medium school in my village, but none of the locals could afford to go there. Only rich kids from other states could afford to attend. And when I interacted with a girl from that school is when I found out about this Sanskrit in Sanskrit period and Hindi in Hindi period. So yeah,
And was this a boarding school?
this
or-
was a boarding school. So,
So
and
that's why.
colleges and everything was there, not just school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you know who had founded it? or-
Modi University, so someone with a surname of Modi, some industrialist.
Some private startup.
Yes,
Yes.
they have horse riding and everything.
Whoa. Horse riding. That's a great question. Do we have the Sanskrit professor here? Varanasi, yes. And there's actually a Sanskrit medium university. Yes. 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 Kashi Vidyapit. Yes.
There might
It's a
be-
very beautiful place. Yes, yes, that's right. So there is Sanskrit medium. Is there Sanskrit medium at the lowest levels? I just don't know. Apologies.
Adding on to what she said about the English mother tongue, the aspect. So numerically speaking, we have, according to 2011 census, 0.02% people who mention English as their mother tongue. And interestingly, I came across this discussion on Reddit. It was the Bangalore subreddit where people were discussing. So one person happened to mention that they spoke English at home since childhood. They were native Kannadigas, but they chose to speak in English throughout their childhood. And that person happened to move to America for work. And when they went there and they had their children, they felt the need to reconnect with their local language. And that's when they started speaking in Kannada. So there are, but I could see a lot of people agreeing that at least in Bangalore, there is a big chunk of people who don't consider English as their mother tongue, but as the language they speak with their immediate family.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is another point, speaking about the medium of instruction and mother tongue. There's an interesting pattern of medium of instruction in Maharashtra called semi-English. Semi-English from grade 5 or middle school onwards, where English and science and mathematics are taught in English. The rest of the subjects in Marathi or whatever is applicable. So that has been extremely popular, and in comparison to Marathi medium or English medium schools, semi-English is extremely popular in at least tier 2 and 3 cities in Maharashtra.
Interesting. Really interesting. Yes.
So during my field visit, I happened to observe many classes. At that time, in a class, I found more than 7 to 8 linguistic group students were there, where a teacher was using a language which was mixture of the 7-8 languages. Okay, it's a kind of pidgin kind of language. Okay, so that language is neither anyone's mother tongue. Just simply the teacher was using as a medium of instruction so that everybody can understand well. So any kind of language means it was a mixture of language. It's not
Yes.
a particular language.
Like an argot, I think is
Yeah.
what sociolinguists would call it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I think we're out of time. Is that,
Well, there are more questions. It's just a tutorial.
we can go on or we can,
And this medium thing is like existing mostly in the formal education sector. And there are other sectors also, like the religious education. There are seminaries, there are madrasas, and they are also using some certain language. In some seminaries, their medium of instruction at some level will be Arabic.
Yes.
And such cases are also there. So you have to take such sectors also into the consideration.
most certainly. In fact, I happen to know and worked in some madrasas in Varanasi that, Varanasi is one of the most, it's one of the highest percentage of Muslim population of any city in the country. It's almost 1/3 populated by Muslims. And there are so many madrasas, some linked to the UP board, some of their own initiative. And it was fascinating. Some people would say it's a Hindi medium, some Urdu medium, some Arabic medium. And it was a bit of a shifting, and I didn't know enough about them, but I always wondered, what is the circumstance by which one names the very same school, maybe these three possibilities? I'm sure it's who they're talking to. And this is a great. But no Bhojpuri medium. We'll talk about that later. There's no such thing. Even though it's the 10th most spoken language on earth. Yes. That's what I was thinking. Is that okay with everyone?
Would that be okay just to go through and then you can ask questions? Or do you want a break? 5 minutes, they want a break. Okay. We'll take
5 minutes. How about 5 minutes?
Do you mind pulling up the tutorial? I forget what tutorial it is. I think we have a choice between two. Do you want to just decide now and then we can go get it to you?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Just pulling it up.